how do you close? How do you really get closure? How do you lock someone in? How do you get the pen to take place? How do you get the signature to take place? And for the pen to work, your mind has to work. When I say your mind has to work, your belief set has to work. Your mindset has to work. You have to know that it's possible. And when I say that it's possible, that you are possible, you have to believe and know within your core being that you are possible, that all the things that you want are possible, that all the things that you see in your mind's eye are possible. The pen just locks them in. The close, when someone says yes, when someone agrees, that's just confirmation. But for confirmation to take place, there first has to be contextual thought. Contextual thought, not just abstract thought. It's abstract when you say, I want to make more money. That's abstract. Contextual is a specific number, a specific amount. The pen makes it concrete. The pen is what makes it concrete and writes it into existence. So you don't want to be so abstract. You want to come back to reality. Come back to reality. Go from conceptual to contextual.
Welcome, guys. This is Breakfast with the Brand. I am your host, Junior Frederick, and you are now tuned in to the #1 podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go from bland to industry-leading brand. If you are now tuned in live, I need you to do two things. Number one, put some flames in the chat. Number two, let us know where you're listening in from. I have with me the king of branding himself, Mr. Shaan Rais. And today we're going to talk about how you can deploy leadership in order to protect your success. Shaan, how you doing? Okay, let's give Shaan a moment to come on board. But guys, if you're coming in right now, let's see who we have with us. I see we have Jackie Gilchrist. So Jackie, phenomenal morning to you. Jasmine, phenomenal morning. So Jasmine says she's from Naples. All right, I see Kiana. All right, phenomenal morning. Guys, put it in the chat. I want to ask you a question. What does leadership mean to you? What does leadership mean to you? This is a very interesting topic. I want you to really think about the question that I asked. How does one, listen to the word, deploy leadership? How does one deploy leadership, right, in order to protect their success? Phenomenal morning to you. We're going to bring Shaan on in a minute. But before we do, if you're viewing this live, I need you to do two things. Put them flames in the chat first and foremost, and also hit the share button. So if you're viewing this on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. If you're viewing this on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, definitely put a like, put the comments, and definitely hit that share button. So let's see. Is Shaan ready? Let's see. So Shaan, if you're back there, then definitely let's get the show on the road. But while we wait for that, I see we have a lot of flames coming up. I see Kiana says development.
I am present. Phenomenal morning.
Hey, what's up? What's up, sir? How you doing?
I'm Phenomenal, brother. No complaints at all. We had a couple technical issues in the back of the pits.
Okay.
But yeah,
All right.
everything is good. The leadership shut down the building, right? Yeah, so leadership, how you deploy your leadership and your branding, guys, phenomenal morning. If you guys have been watching what we do on LinkedIn, we put together a personal branding for success newsletter, right? And in that newsletter for the entire week, every single day, we've been dropping bombs on branding. So branding bombs have been dropped on LinkedIn. Check that out. Personal branding for success is something that we're giving away for free, just value. And what we spoke about the beginning, what we spoke about this week was just what we're going to talk about today. And that is how leadership can be deployed in order to protect and stabilize the brand.
Yes, sir. Now, before we get into that, I want to recognize a few people who are always tuned in live. Let me just say, guys, we really appreciate you being live with us every single Saturday. I want to recognize, starting from the bottom of the chat going up, I see we have Jasmine. So Jasmine, phenomenal morning to you. I see Kiana, I see Jennifer, Jackie in the building, right? Jackie with the K in the building as well. And we have a few other people that I can't see the names, but I know that they're present. If you're on LinkedIn and you're viewing this, I want to say phenomenal morning to you. Shaan, I am particularly interested, right? Interested and very excited a little bit about this topic. And the reason is because most people's idea of leadership is not a mechanism. Let me say that again. So when people think about leadership, they have this vision. They know what it looks like. Like, for example, you go somewhere, you might see somebody do something. You might see Shaan or myself or somebody else do something. You say, yeah, that's leadership. But today we're going to get into what exactly is that thing and how can you use it? How can you use it? How can you use it? But we're going to get into that after the break. But before we do that, Shaan, do you have anything that you'd like to say to the listeners?
Well, yeah, definitely. Leverage. Leverage is a key word, right? If you remember back in 2019, I believe, 2019, we began the Leadership Leverage Executive Coaching Community. And that was primarily, secondarily, and tertiarily for the purpose of learning how to leverage one's leadership. That's what it was for, learning how to leverage your leadership and create a phenomenal personal brand that was not only attainable. You know, a lot of people are living the American dream momentarily, right? They hit superstardom momentarily. They crack 7 figures momentarily, and then they're bankrupt when you turn around. They start a business momentarily. They're succeeding momentarily. What leadership does, and the personal brand done the right way, what it does is it makes this dream or this success not become a nightmare, right? It makes it not become a nightmare, and it allows the attainable to become sustainable.
Nice. Now, guys, when we come back after this short break, we're going to be talking about how to deploy your leadership in order to safeguard your success. Take us to the break, Mr. B.
Let's go.
All right. Welcome back. This is Breakfast with the Brand. I am your host, Junior Frederick, and I have with me the king of branding himself. Guys, if you are now tuned in live, I need you to put some flames in the chat. We're going to get into a fire subject this morning. So check this out. Shaan, I think we should start by defining leadership. When we started, I was saying that when you think about leadership, most people have this picture in their mind. Like they may see someone perform an action, they may see somebody doing something, and they could recognize leadership. They could say, yes, that's a leader, or that was a leadership action. We even sometimes say a leadership position, someone's in a leadership position. But I feel like the word leadership gets thrown around a lot. So my question is, how would you define leadership from the leadership development speaker himself? What is leadership?
The ability to influence. The ability to influence, right? Leadership is the capacity to lead. It's some people say that you need to have followers in order to be a leader. However, if you can trust yourself, then you can be self-led and self-directed, so you can lead yourself until other people catch on. Right. So for those of you who question, am I a leader, and feel like you might not be because you don't have followers, that's not the case. Continue to lead yourself and the followers will come. And everyone is in a position where they can be a leader right now. It's taking ownership of your position right now. So if you're a mother, you're a leader. If you're a father, you're a leader. Even children can become leaders of their siblings and of their space. Be accountable to yourself and don't need to be micromanaged. That's leadership, taking ownership. I help leaders develop themselves even if they're on the front line of staff, so that they don't need to be micromanaged. They take leadership of their position or their area in their department, right? Let me say this, right? Some people need to take control of their emotions and leadership of their own mind, their own thought process. Leadership starts within. Let me say that. Because in order for you to lead anyone outside of you, you have to lead yourself first. A lot of people want a leadership position, but as we know, there's a dark side to leadership too. And when leadership goes wrong, it's because it's external as opposed to internal. When you see someone do something, and I don't want to get too deep into it in the beginning, but when you see someone do something that doesn't agree with the brand that they've built, it's an external display of an internal conflict. So when you see someone do something on the outside that contradicts their brand positioning, their leadership position, it betrays the defects that exist on the inside.
Wow, very powerful there. But I'm hearing what you're saying. And by the way, guys, if you do have a question about what Shaan says, just put it in the chat. I will be sure to get to your question. It seems as if leadership sounds like one of those words that has multiple meanings. Leadership position, because you could be in a leadership position, but not necessarily, I'll say, recognize your leadership or be true to your leadership based on what you're saying. Because you said that everybody's a leader. People just haven't recognized their leadership.
Yeah.
It's the same way, like, it's the same thing we say, like, everybody's a brand. It's about, are you going to recognize your brand? If you're on the internet, you're portraying an image, right? You're leaving a feeling. When people think about you, they think about something. It's just that most people are not conscious of it. So my question is, are you saying that leadership is a quality? The word leadership.
Leader would be a noun, and leadership would be a verb.
Mm.
So yes, leadership would be a quality. The leader would be the one displaying it or not displaying it, right? It's activation. So leadership is the activation of the leader. Everyone has leadership potential. But the difference is it kinetic or is is it active? If it's not active, then it's just like having an unmonumental life. A lot of people subscribe and delineate to passivity, a case where they don't maximize their potential. They don't realize their potential. They don't activate their potential. That's the case of a person who has not begun yet to truly activate their leadership potential. We all have the capacity to lead. Where do you think leadership comes from? Leadership comes from regular people doing phenomenal things in times of duress and in times of crisis. People become so. First off, I would say to truly go get the book, The Phenomenal Leader, that I wrote 2 years ago. I wrote a book called The Phenomenal Leader, Learn 31 Styles of Leadership in 31 Days, because leadership is broad. It's so broad. There are people who are assigned leadership. There are autocratic leaders. There is transformational leadership. There is transactional leadership. There is situational leadership. There is leadership in crisis. There's so many different facets to leadership and different versions of leadership. But the leader within, everybody watching this has. The only question is, have they realized it? Have they activated it? It's also the difference between a phenomenal relationship or a terrible relationship. Someone who's on, as we used to call it in New York, Skid Row, or the top of the food chain, right? Mm-hmm. It's up to you. Where you exist will be based on your leadership.
That's very very interesting. Where you exist will be based on your leadership. You know, some people could argue that everybody, whether they recognize it or not, they're leading themselves somewhere.
That's right.
So
talk about
it could be. So is that what you mean? Because I often hear you talk about the dark side of leadership. So let's talk about that for a few minutes, right? Somebody who has not, as you say, activated their potential. And when you say this, I'm assuming that it's from the perspective of doing something positive. When you say activate your potential, it means that you activate your potential to do something outwardly that is positive. But there are some people who activate their potential in the opposite direction, or they don't activate it and they still go in some direction. You know, no action is still an action. No decision is still a decision.
That's right. No vote is still a vote.
No vote is still a vote. So is that still leadership? And is that a different version, or is that what you refer to when you talk about the dark side of leadership?
The dark side of leadership is going contrary to what you know is right. Ego, maniacal, maniacal tendencies. Some leadership pervert their power purposefully, intentionally. Greed causes the dark side of leadership many times. Power and control. Again, it's influence. Influence can be a very influential power, and it can change people like money. You know how they say money changes people? So can power and control. People may have the best intentions, but if they don't have the true components of leadership, the self-awareness, the self-regulation, the emotional intelligence, if they don't have the foundation, like if they don't have these things, let me give you an example. Let me give you a perfect example. You can't hold a high office in government without being married. You can't hold a high office in the military without being married. You can't hold a high office within religious bodies, specific religious bodies, but you have to be married to hold these offices. And the reason that you have to be married is because that's your foundation. You're less likely to go off track morally. Your moral compass is going to be more grounded. If you can't become president of the United States without being married. I know that's like what I don't understand. You will, if you begin to attain certain heights, you'll realize the power in union and the power in connection, and why I say what I say and why systems are built the way they are.
Right.
Leadership has to be balanced. Leadership has to be balanced. It has to be controlled, or it will take control of you.
Yes, sir. Guys, listen, we're about to go to a break. But before we do, put some flames in the chat if you've been enjoying this conversation so far. When we come back, we'll be talking more about what exactly leadership is and how we could elevate our leadership so we could elevate our life. Let's grow. Welcome back, guys. This is Breakfast with the Brand, the #1 podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go from bland to industry-leading brand. If you've enjoyed the show so far, put some more flames in the chat. Also, click like, subscribe, and share. I have with me Mr. Shaan Rais. Shaan, interesting conversation so far.
Very much so.
Yes, sir. You said a lot there, and I had a question before we went to the break, right? So before we went to the break, we said that no action is an action. No decision is a decision.
That's right.
My question is, what about the people who are not conscious? Because remember, not everybody. Think about you. I mean, you've always told a story of back when you were in Harlem. I could remember this specific story about you looking into the mirror and closing your eyes and asking yourself, what is the example of leadership for you? My question is, what about the people who are not yet conscious of leadership?
It's the responsibility of those who are to make themselves known. It's the responsibility of those who are. So this is why it's so important that when people work with me, we don't just do business. I don't just show you how to make money. I show you how to have meaningfulness. I don't just show you how to get an income. I show you how to have impact. I don't just compel you to up your bank account. I impel you to up your behavior. And I also repel people that don't have those tendencies, those desires, those traits and characteristics. I don't work with people who I see gaps in character. I help people to develop their leadership so that they can be an example to someone else. Because we are an example to everyone who looks upon us. The eyes of the world are always upon us, always. And there's always judgments rendered. And you don't know how influential you actually are. You have no clue. I can remember people doing things that influenced my choices, decisions, and observations, and they didn't even know I was watching them. And you learn it as a parent when you hear the term, don't your children won't do what you say, they'll watch what you do. Right. And if you don't take that into consideration, then it doesn't mean anything to you. And you carry yourself a certain kind of way, carelessly and inattentive to your leadership throughout your life, and you consistently influence people the wrong way. We have to be responsible. It's my position that we want to leave the world a better place than we received it. It's almost like the relay races, the relay race where you run and then you pass the baton, and they run and they pass the baton to the next person, next person, next person. Don't throw the baton on the ground. Like, don't just throw the baton. Don't be
Right.
responsible. Give it to the next person with an opportunity. So many times we'll come into life or adulthood and say, wow, I wish they would have done more. I wish my parents would have had more. I wish there was more opportunity. Okay, take the baton you were given, curate a better situation, create, develop, work hard on yourself so that you can create a better situation for those who follow you. That's the normal trajectory of leadership. Take ownership of your space, no matter how it was given to you. Think about when you get a job. Think about when you get a job and you go into a job place and the office is twisted. Okay, so the office is twisted. It reflects on the person who was there before you. But how the supervisor or how the next person comes and receives their desk on their shift is a reflection of you. Many people say, well, I was given this way, get it how you live. Since I got it this way, I'm not going to change it. This is what I received. I'm not going to go the extra mile. I'm only paid this much. I'm only going to lead this much. I'm only going to do this much. Okay, there's cameras everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The eyes of the world are always upon you. And I believe there's a spiritual camera watching you all the time as well. There's a character camera watching you all the time as well. So take your moments and maximize them. Take your moments. Every moment is an opportunity. You can sleep or you can lead. The choice is yours.
That's right. That's right. Very, very powerful answer there. Now, I want to get into a different subject. Not different subject, but different question. So, guys, we've defined leadership. Let me pose the question to everybody looking. Do you feel as if you've gotten a different perspective on leadership, or you've gotten a more sound definition, or do you have a better visual representation of what leadership is? Put a number 1 in the comments. If you're viewing this on Facebook, put a number 1. On YouTube, put a number 1. LinkedIn, same thing. Just put that in the chat. And while we wait for those number 1s to come in, Shaan, I have a question now. So now that we've defined leadership, let's talk about how do we deploy leadership. Now, at the beginning of the conversation, you made mention of a specific newsletter. Now, I read that newsletter, and as everybody knows what the topic of conversation is, what's going on. Certain people have exhibited what might be seen as by some as character defects, um, maybe a lack of leadership, a lack of self-control. And in that particular article, you addressed one public figure, where you spoke about something that he did. And I felt like your take was interesting because you spoke about how that person could use coaching, but more specifically coaching for leadership development. So I want to talk about how could he have deployed leadership to safeguard his success.
Okay. So we're talking about Will Smith, right? And I don't take shots at anybody, right? I don't take shots. I don't do the inflammatory. I don't do the I think there's a pandemic of propaganda, right? And I'm not that person. I also think that there's a pandemic of brotherly condemnation, and I don't do that either, right? So you won't see me condemn another person. That's not my position ever. My position is always elevation. That's a leadership trait. A leadership trait is not to knock someone when they're down, kick someone when they're down, laugh at someone's inadequacy, laugh at someone's lack or problem. That's the dark side of leadership, taking the opportunity to knock someone down or stand on someone to make yourself feel better or sell more newspapers. That's not my thing. That's never been my thing, and it will never become my thing. Okay, so with that being said, he could have handled it better. I know that he would have handled it better had he had the proper safeguards in place. Safeguards such as self-awareness, self-regulation, attention to detail. Leadership teaches attention to detail. You don't have to be in the military to be hyper aware, hyper vigilant. And so you don't have to be in the Secret Service protecting the president. You can be hyper vigilant protecting yourself and protecting your family and protecting your image and protecting your brand. Now, had he been accustomed to this kind of training and development, he would have sensed when something was amiss. He would have sensed when he felt a little bit off or was angered or felt compelled. There's triggers. There's physiological and biological triggers. Your mouth gets dry, your hands get sweaty, you start to feel tingling. It's different triggers. Different people are triggered by different things, and the way their triggers show up, or they show up differently. Some people get hot flashes. Some people start to sweat. Some people get hot. Some people see red. Some people, their pupils get dilated. Some people's heart starts to beat fast. If he would have noticed these in leadership development, you teach ways to modulate. So another tendency of leadership development is not only self-awareness, but self-regulation. Self-regulation says, I don't like what was just said. I'm going to take a walk. Self-regulation says, my breathing is shallow. It's up in my chest. When I feel that way when I get angered, I'm going to deep breathe for a moment and center myself. Leadership development, consequential thinking, it employs and deploys consequential thinking, and it doesn't play checkers and react, it plays chess and responds. So when that happens, when you look at a chessboard, you say, so-and-so just made this move. If I move this way, these are the 10 things that can take place. If I move this way, these are the 10 things that can take place. If I move this way, these are the 10 things that can take place. Which is the best option? That's what chess does. That's what leadership development does. That's what executive coaching does.
All right. So very interesting.
Strategy.
That's right. What I hear the most out of everything that you've just said is self-awareness.
Yes, sir.
Self-awareness, being aware of who you are, what makes you tick. Um, that's a tough thing to do.
Let me give you another thing. Let me give you another one with that. We know how nobody wants to be made the fool of.
Yes.
So everybody here has an image of how they have an idea of how they portray. They have an idea of the way they look. Everybody here, if we was to turn on your camera, you know how you look. You have an idea of how you look. However, the way you think you look isn't always the way you're perceived by others. True leadership is always aware of how they're perceived by others.
That's interesting.
And we influence that.
So you're saying that leadership influences that, the way that they are perceived.
Of course, it's executive presence. It's
Great. So,
executive presence. We're
right.
aware of it. Oh, let me give you a you want a grassroots granular example?
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, you sure?
Yes, sir.
You've never seen me pick my nose. That doesn't mean that I don't have follicles of hair. It doesn't mean that I don't itch. It doesn't mean that things don't happen where I might want to scratch my face or something. No, it just means that I'm an executive. I'm on camera. I'm very aware of how I'm perceived. Why in the world would I do such a thing? However, Facebook Lives, or Facebook in general, or Zoom calls, you see it all the time. People get on calls, they dig in their eyes, they dig in their nose, they scratch in their ear, they do all kinds of stuff. This is a lack of self-modulation, self-control, self-regulation, self-awareness. People don't think about how they're being perceived.
Right.
They do things. They do things. Sometimes we do things when something rubs us the wrong way, and we don't do it in response to, we do it in reaction to. And when we react, we tend to lose.
So what I'm hearing you say is, and I say this all the time, 3 levels of action. No action, number 1. Number 2, creative action. No, number 2 is reactive. Reaction. You being reactive. So you're reacting to stimulus from your surroundings. And then the third one is creative action, meaning that you're creating the action that gets other people to react. So when you talk about leadership and really putting those things into play, what I hear you saying is that leaders have the ability to make the ascension internally from being reactive to being creative.
Yes, definitely. It's a process.
Most definitely. Guys, if you've been enjoying the conversation so far, put some flames in the chat and hit the like button. Like, share, definitely subscribe. Now, we have a few questions that we want to take. By the way, if you do have questions, this is a Q&A. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. Mr. B, can we bring up Ms. Boyer's comment? She says, I read your article. Do you think that having a coaching and counselor, I'm guessing she meant a coach there. So do you think that having a coach and a counselor would assist him in healing and leadership? Now, Shaan, before you get into it, I already know like the perspective. I see 2 things there. I see the word healing. Now I'm very hyper vigilant like you. I see healing and leadership. Healing, and I want everybody to pay attention to this when Shaan gives his response. So Shaan, what say you?
Okay. One is forward facing and one is reflective. One is backwards facing. One is progressive. One could be seen as a little regressive, right? There is trauma. There is trauma. There is such a thing as trauma. There is such a thing as mental health. When someone falls under mental health diagnosis, when they have the what the qualifications, the earmarks, and the tendencies for mental health, I would say suspend the coaching, get the counseling. Because it's hard to do two things at one time. It's hard to have your foot on the brakes and the gas at the same time. Sometimes you need to stop. I tell people all the time, everybody doesn't need coaching. Some people need a couch. Some people don't need a coach, they need a couch. Some people don't need coaching, they need couching, right? They need to address whatever tendencies took place, whatever things took place, whatever happened. They need to deal with that stuff first before we can even talk about becoming the phenomenal leader. Sometimes people need to become the phenomenal son, the phenomenal husband, the phenomenal father, the phenomenal mother, the phenomenal person, the phenomenal human being first. And that requires many times counseling, psychotherapy. I don't have a problem with those things at all. But I do think there's a time and a place for both. So once you have resolution, once you can function, once your faculties, once your trauma has been resolved, once you've overcome that, you've gotten past that, then you set your eyes towards a future focused goal and action oriented model. That's where coaching comes in. Coaching is there to help a person get to the next level. Let me say this. When a person has both competencies, like myself, like Miss Boyer, we look at things from a different perspective. So I have a background in clinical counseling. Miss Boyer has a background in clinical counseling. We are qualified uniquely to help individuals who may have some significant symptoms or some past situations that have not been resolved, and we're able to help them to quickly eliminate and move forward. Most coaches don't. So my advice to coaches when they ask me, especially when they're starting out, they're like, Shaan, I'm trying to get money. I'm trying to start my business. And I got a client who has mental health issues. I say, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Have a database of references and resources so you can make the appropriate referral. Don't try to counsel. Don't try to flip back into something just because you've been through something, but you're not qualified to help someone else deal with something. Just because you may have dealt with your own stuff, don't try to dig into somebody else's trauma and past, because what will happen is you won't get dirt on your hands, you'll get blood on your hands. It gets very dark over there. Don't play with mental health. Let the people who are trained in that deal with that. So yes, I do believe that if someone were to deal with that, however, let me say this. However, my personal opinion and my professional opinion, high performance individuals, super high performance individuals, A-list, C-suite, 6-7 figure performers don't always need a retrogressive perspective because it's re-traumatizing. I learned in my practice that my 45 minutes with clients was not enough. My 6-month year with a client was not enough. I also learned that a future focused goal and action oriented perspective was more progressive for the clients than was a biopsychosocial model of tell me when you were touched and tell me what happened to you when you were 6 and tell me what happened, how you felt when your father left and tell me how you felt when you went to the orphanage. That was re-traumatizing, and it stayed re-traumatizing. And every time I re-traumatized them, I hurt them. And every time, and we couldn't resolve it because we didn't have the time, because the organization that I worked with said it was a 45-minute hour and you met twice a month or twice a week. You understand? There wasn't the time that was there. So I chose to create a future focused goal and action oriented model where I only worked with those who had already passed that level of going through what they had been through in order to get to where they were trying to go to. And that's what I help people with. So I help people who are maybe an A-list celebrity reach higher and reach further, because your energy goes where your focus goes, where your energy flows. So if you're If you're focused on going to the next level, you don't have time to think about what happened to you when you were 6 years old, or when daddy left the house, or when, you know, there may have been situations of domestic violence within your household. When you're focused on goals and actions that are going to take you and your family to the next level of legacy, then your focus is not on what happened in your past. Some people, not everybody, but some people have the ability to leave the past in the past and focus on the forward. Imagine trying to drive with your view in the rear view. How far do you think you're going to go? That's why I say some people need to pull over. But if you're already if you're already A-list, if you're already celebrity, then and your career is the trajectory is fast. A lot of times you don't have time to pull over. Athletes who were given $1 million and $20 million at the age of 20, they don't have time to pull over. They got to perform. They have to, it's performance related. So coaching is performance related. Counseling is trauma related. I hope that was a sufficient response. Lila, can you respond to me and let me know if that was a sufficient response? Do you understand what I'm saying? I know there's a place for both, but it's kind of hard to stop at 30,000 feet. There's an executive coaching at that place that needs to take place. And usually, imagine the benefit of someone having access to an executive coach who also has the counseling competency, so that we can navigate and keep the trajectory, so you don't drop in altitude or lose momentum or stop the engines, for God's sakes. Because what happens at 30,000 feet at a high performance career, if you stop the engines to take inventory and the pilot goes in the back to check what's in the storage and the baggage and the cargo hold, it can't happen. It can't happen.
That's right. It's just not possible, right?
No, sir.
Wow, that is Shaan, you said a lot there. We're about to jump into a break in a few seconds, but guys, definitely keep your questions coming. This is Breakfast with the Brand. Let's grow.
Hey guys, listen, right before you stop, right before you quit, before you throw in the towel, I want you to hear this one more time. Listen, you are who you need to be already. I'm going to tell you what they've been hiding from you. You are already who you need to be. Content you don't need any more of. You've been had enough content. What you need is context. What you need is system. You have the skill. What you need is system. You have the presence. You need the procedure. You have the promise. You need the process. I want to show you the process and the system to go from where you are to where you need to be, and how to get clients finally on autopilot. Let's grow.
All right, guys, this is Breakfast with the Brand. Welcome back. Listen, if you've enjoyed today's show so far, put some flames in the chat. I want to send a quick shout out to everybody listening. I see Kiana, Jasmine, we have Jackie, Jennifer, and many other people. So we are sort of winding down, and I want to know if anybody else has any questions. I'm about to bring Shaan back out, But if you do have a question, then definitely feel free to put it in the comments. So, Mr. Rais, how you feeling? So it's been a very interesting conversation. We've
Yes,
gone
sir. Yes, sir. You know, sometimes I feel like these conversations are not long enough, right? Sometimes I feel like it's not long enough. And sometimes we need more time. So maybe we'll come back next week and finish the conversation and finish the dialogue, because I don't feel like the conversation is over.
Yes, it's not.
No.
Let's ask people what they think, right? Guys, do you think this conversation is over? Would you like to have us do this one more time? This particular subject, this particular topic. Would you like to hear us speak about it one more time? Put a number 1 in the comments.
I want to also say this, right? And this is very important. There's a stigma. There's still a stigma and a prejudicial slight or perspective given to mental health within specific demographics, like the Black community, right? We don't do couches comfortably. There's a stigma. There's a stigma around counseling. Should there be? I don't think there should be, but there is. People say, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. At the same time, they're willing to pay for coaching because counseling is perceived as being mental health oriented and mental health related, which it is, but they see it as being a weakness, which it's not. And coaching is seen as empowering, which it is. So sometimes, I don't want people to get the two confused, but sometimes it's important that as a coach, you know how to tell when that line is crossed or when a person is more in need of mental health services than coaching or executive coaching. And it's also so important. Like for me, it was very important for me to have both competencies. So when I saw it, I could address it. I was qualified to address it.
Yeah. That's super important. And that goes all the way back to I guess ethics.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's ethics. Yes, sir. It's I would beg deeper research into what a lot of people try to do real quick. Whenever you rush a process, it's usually not as effective as it could be or should be or would be if you took a little bit more time. So I know people see people making money on the internet and they're like, ooh, everybody's a coach and I can do coaching and I can give advice and I can help people. You come across certain situations in coaching where it begs more research, it begs more training, it begs more competency. And it's almost like the black belt in martial arts. And we talked about this in the Leadership Leverage a couple of days ago. It's not really about what you're trained in or the qualifications you have, it's who you're trained by. That will determine the quality of your black belt, because in some instances, a black belt in one school can get beaten by a green belt or a yellow belt in another school because of the level of training. So yes. I have that background, qualification, certification, graduation, diplomas, certificates in multiple years and multiple hours of training. So when I coach someone through maybe a coaching certification process, they don't only get one version or one way to look at it. They get evidence-based coaching as well as the skills to recognize what that looks like, what mental health looks like and what to do, and the training on how to handle that situation as opposed to being inadequate. You don't want your enthusiasm to carry you where your training will bury you, right? You don't want your enthusiasm and your zest and your desire to serve to take you somewhere that your training won't sustain you. You want to have a full rounded competency to where you're truly qualified. This is not a hustle. We're talking about humanity. We're talking about people's lives. It's deeper than the bank account.
Yes, it is. It most certainly is. Um, I want to bring up a few of these comments. So I see, Mr. B, we have a comment. Let's start from the top and go down. I see we have a comment from Jasmine, right after what Miss Boyer just said. So let's bring that up. No, not this one. There's another one a bit higher up.
I think there was one by Jennifer.
Yes, we'll get Jennifer's. Okay, so Jennifer says, can you give a few signs that a leader needs an executive brand coach?
Yeah, if there's a scandal, definitely. If there's a scandal, if you're portrayed in the news the wrong way, if you either had a public slip or you feel like you're about to, if you're not having the impact that you should, if your CPR isn't right. So I say that CEOs, I have a program for CEOs called CPR, Culture, People, and Revenue. The same thing goes for celebrities. Some celebrities need CPR. They need culture, people, and revenue. If your culture isn't right, if the culture within your organization, if the people around you aren't treating you right, if your money is funny, right? If your money is funny, if your public image is mismanaged and looks a little bit out of whack, guys. We got 7, 8, and 9-figure earners in every community, but sometimes it leans over it more into some communities than others. Where even though you have this level of attainment, you're still laughed at. And you're still joked on in the media. And people are making fun of you like you're a child or like you're emotionally unstable or like when you feel your brand going the wrong way, because remember, your brand is the way people feel and what they say about you before you enter the room and after you leave. It's their experience of your brand. So when a person says your name as a brand, what follows afterwards? If I said a couple names and just threw a couple names out there, you just immediately start to laugh. And then others you would immediately take into deeper respect. Immediately it was said, that wouldn't have happened to Denzel. That wouldn't have happened to Samuel L. Jackson. That wouldn't have happened to this one. That wouldn't have happened to that one. But why did it happen to this one? And this one wouldn't have done that if. And he wouldn't have done that if. If people have all kinds of suppositions and opinions, you have the ability to control that. You have the ability to take control of that. And that's what executive brand coaching does, is it helps you to take control of your brand and not let it just be out of control and portrayed by other people the way they would like to have us or you perceived. I hope that makes sense. Because when you control it the right way, you can add a 0 to the back of it. Branding is everything. Your brand is everything. You have the brand before you make the money. And if you do it the right way, you'll have the brand and you'll never stop making the money. But if you do it the wrong way and the brand twists, you'll lose everything, like a house of cards in mid-flight at 30,000 feet and come down as hard as, and it won't be able, there'll be no survivors. It's not a game when you're playing the game at this level.
That's right.
In life, business, and relationships, you got to remember, a lot of people see paparazzi and media and, tabloids, and they joke and laugh and ha ha, kiki, but these are people's lives. Whether they're athletes, A-list celebrities, C-suite executives, CEOs, they're like, okay, they're in the media now. They're not a person anymore. Yes, they are. And they have feelings and emotions and desires and fears just like everyone else. They're just playing the game at a higher level. So take that into account. So if you ask me, everyone needs a coach. Everyone needs a coach. And the interesting thing to think about is this. The interesting thing to reflect on is this, and we'll continue this conversation next week. But there's strength and conditioning coaches for athletes in school. There's vocal coaches and acting coaches in the performance arts for people as they grow and develop. There's racing coaches for people who do the drag racing and everything. There's coaches, there's there's dribble coaches. For real. There's coaches for everything that you do until you crack the surface. They don't have coaches for you to keep it. They don't have coaches on what to do with it, which is why 3 to 7 years after a football player retires, they're bankrupt. Which is why you have people that it gets horrible when it's not done the right way. It gets horrible. Lives sometimes are lost in the balance, and people laugh at it after the fact and have all kinds of opinions and judgments, but that's still somebody's mother, somebody's daughter, somebody's father, somebody's husband. This is a real thing. This is a very real thing. So I want you who are pursuing services, service delivery, who want to become coaches, want to become consultants, I would implore you to do more research into what you're really doing, because you can make the money, make it meaningful. You can have the income, you can triple that, quadruple that, 10x that, have some impact. You can make the economy, for God's sakes, have some empathy.
Wow. Mic drop moment there, guys. Mic drop moment. Guys, this has been amazing. We wanna just bring up a few of these comments. We want to say thank you so much. And this conversation will definitely be continued. Before we go, Mr. B, let's bring up a few of these comments from our people right here. So we have Jasmine. She said, high quality leaders also make sure the people closest to them are dedicated towards protecting their interests and needs based on what they know about the leader.
Thank you. Thank you. It takes a team.
It really does.
It takes a team. You need a team. You need buffers. You need forward-facing buffers who are trained in media relations, who can speak your words and your voice and your brand and be on brand to hold you at a distance, because you might not always be operating in your best self. Sometimes it's you know what I mean? Like, you could get upset, like, and not be it might not be a camera moment, but sometimes when you're on camera and when you're this public figure, everybody got a camera in your face.
That's right. Guys, listen, it has been an amazing show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back.
I want to hold on before we close. I want to go back to what we spoke on. What was Lila's response to what I said? Put Lila Boyer's response up. I don't want to just end it like that. I want to hear her response and see what she had to say in response to that.
All right. She said, I think he did not get the assistant that he needed.
Okay.
As he is and was a leader in his industry. I believe that his book opened a space that now can be worked on.
Good.
Both counseling and coaching can help.
I agree. Definitely. Both counseling and coaching can help, and both counseling and coaching can help anybody. I would say counseling first, because you got to deal with those things. When you don't deal with those things and you don't resolve those things and you don't have a lid on those things, the jack in the box pops up in the middle of the Oscars. So I agree 100%. But after you get the counseling, get the coaching so you can go to the next level and you can leverage your leadership and develop your leadership. See, counseling is a regressive stance on what happened in the past. That's fine. Get to optimal performance, get to optimal functioning, and then get the coaching to go to the next level. Put fire on what works. Pour gasoline on what works.
Definitely. All right, guys. So on that note, thank you so much for being with us. We will see you next Saturday on Breakfast with the Brand, the #1 podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go from bland to industry leading brand. Let's go.